Satan is a persuasive devil. In fact, the greatest damage he does in this poem is through the act of persuading Eve to eat the fatal fruit. This is in keeping with heroic tradition. Epic heroes are supposed to be good speakers as well as good fighters, and we see Satan use his persuasive game a lot. But we are not meant to be persuaded by it. There is, latterly, in our current era, a kind of subgenre of works about diabolical figures who give various kinds of rationalizations for their crimes. Oh, I'm Satan, but really, it's you, isn't it? Your sinful humanity that needs me. You would create me. These tend to be fairly flimsy, frankly. If you're seeing Lucifer on TV and there are various justifications for the devil, those tend to be okay if you really, really want to believe them. But if you push on them a little bit, they'll fall apart. Milton's Satan is much trickier. Milton, on one level, trusts us to know that we're not supposed to be on the devil's side, or Milton, being a Calvinist, believing only a few of us are saved and the most are damned, expect us to buy the devil stuff, and what good is it going to do us anyway? Like, if we can't see through this, he can't. If God can't save us, Milton doesn't think he can. Or, as Stanley Fish in his book Surprised by Sin would argue, Milton wants to help us catch ourselves buying Satan's stuff. Everyone goes, oh man, Satan almost talked me into that. I need to take my own inventory. Milton gives Satan very, very good rationalizations, which he then undercuts. One of my favorites from book 4, and it happens at least one other place, Satan will say that he had nigh half of the angels. How many angels rebelled with him against God? Nearly half, almost half. Though it's made very clear at various points around the poem that it's a third. It's a third. That's a great moment of satanic rhetoric. Satan's like, yeah, like almost half. He inflated 1/3. Actually, you're actually half of all the others. Like, there are twice as many on the other side as on your side. I had almost half. He bumped it up. In his very first speech, he says, oh, he talks about God, who so much the stronger proved he with his thunder. Until then, who knew the force of those diagrams? So, who knew he had thunder? Who knew God was so strong? The answer, Satan, is you knew. You knew, Satan. You totally did. Who? He talks about his utmost power, God's utmost power, the adverse for our foes in dubious battle on the plains of heaven, and shook his throne. Satan has been soundly defeated. His version is, man, but I came close. It doesn't change the facts. Satan is the great rhetorician. He is the great spinmeister. He will take the facts and massage them over and over again. Dubious battle, doubtful battle. It could have gone either way. I almost made it. Though dubious also means doubtful. Like, this is dubious, and that like we should doubt. It's doubtful. I doubt your wisdom in doing this. This was an extremely bad idea. This idea was dubious. Your plan was dubious. Sorry. Satan makes me laugh because of the joke's on him. Milton is not ha-ha funny. Milton is a thoroughgoing ironist, and the irony is on Satan a lot of the time. Well, there's also more of it, especially in book 4. Here's Satan speaking at length to Beelzebub on page 17 of your book. If you have another edition, we're about line 242 of book 1. Is this the region, this the soil, the clime, said then the lost archangel. This deceit that we must change for heaven, this mournful gloom for that celestial light. Be it so, since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best, whom reason hath equaled, force hath made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fields where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors! Hail, infernal world! And thou profoundest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. What matter where, if I be still the same, and what I should be all but less than he, whom thunder hath made greater? Here at least we shall be free. The Almighty hath not built here for his envy, will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice, to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. That last line is very famous. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. I want to be in charge. He wants to be in charge. He wants to reign. He wants to be number one. He'll be number one of Agonyville, of the worst place you could possibly be. He will, rather than be servant number one or servant number two, in heaven. This is both, many people have found this position attractive. Satan is given a reasonable position. But he's also, I think, clearly wrong. Like, no, actually, it'd be better to be served. Like, his inability to be a servant, his inability to accept his place, his inability to acknowledge anyone as his superior leads him to the worst place it is possible to be. And he keeps heaping punishment down on himself. He's extremely self-destructive. His argument, the mind is its own place and can make of itself a hell of heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. It sounds like things we've heard before. It's this idea comes from a play by Christopher Marlowe that we have not read, wasn't on the list. It is similar to Hamlet's position that he could be bounded in a nutshell and think himself king of infinite space. It's just about the mind. Happiness is in the mind, and there's an irony here, and this will be paid back later in book 4. Satan says, it doesn't matter where I am as long as my mind is right. The underlying irony is his mind is wrong. Actually, when he gets out of hell, he will still be in hell. He will tell us as much later. I want to walk through. Here we'll be free. The mind is its own place. A great thought. In itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. No matter where, if I be still the same, and what should I be? All but less than he whom thunder hath made greater. All but less than means almost equal to. He needs to keep insisting, I'm almost the equal of God. Almost. Just that thunder, that's the only difference. It's not the only difference. He's decided, like, I'm as good as that. Not for that thunder. It's like me saying, hey man, I could be a movie star like, say, Matt Damon, except like he's about a year younger than I am. That is not that is true. That is not because he had those acting classes early. That's the difference between me and Matt Damon. That is a difference between me and Matt Damon. It is one of the differences, but it's not the top one. And there's an extensive list. Yes. Why isn't Matt Damon not teaching this class? Doesn't have a PhD. One reason among many. Doesn't need the gig. One reason among many. I want to walk through a few details here. Satan, when talking to the other demons, will continually not acknowledge God's rightful sovereignty. He will say, he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Not he is right, but like, no, through his power, he decides what's right. Through force, he decrees what's right, but that's what's right. That's what power says, which is in fact how Satan views the world. He will, through his power, decide what should happen, should not happen. In fact, he also denied both God's benevolence and God's sovereignty. He who now is sovereign. So the lie is in the now. Yeah, now. But always, dude, like always. Satan, always, like since before you existed. Always. Always on top. Again, I'm not here to propagandize for a particular religious position. I'm here to explain this book was written by a Christian polemicist. So this is how this book works. Furthest from him is best, as if this was Satan's idea. Yeah, we want to be as far from him as possible. You've been thrown as far from him as possible. Him who, whom reason hath equaled, force hath made supreme above his equals. Whoa, there's a lot of subtle lying in there. Whom reason hath equaled. Reasonably, intellectually, we're equal. We were on par with God. We tied him in terms of our reasoning and the justice of our cause. That's not proven at all. But force has made above his equals. Satan is very interesting in the idea that he is like that. God is actually not above him, but is above but is equal, should be his equal. That no, because Satan doesn't want anyone to be higher than him. Both Milton and Satan, in their different ways, are very invested in hierarchy, in a universe where various orders of beings are above or below each other. And this is imagined as rightful and natural. It does not mean, Milton does not particularly mean that's how human social interaction should be, though the Women's Studies Department have some complaints about his discussions of Adam and Eve. Frank, not just the Women's Studies Department, me too. Book 4 is coming. But Satan gets hierarchy wrong. He wants to have a hierarchy, but he can't bear to have anyone above him. Milton believes there's a hierarchy, and you have to acknowledge those who are above you, just as you have a responsibility those below you. Satan's version of hierarchy is, I should have power over everyone below me, I should be on top, no one should be above me, and he just cannot bear the basic fact that he was created by an infinitely powerful being who is wiser, smarter, more powerful than he could be. Force has made supreme above his equals. Here is him speaking to his troops. But first, a description of him himself. He's described from about line 589. He's described as the Dark Angels' their dread commander. He, above the rest, in shape and gesture proudly eminent, stood like a tower. His form had not yet lost all her original brightness, nor appeared less than archangel ruined, and the excessive glory obscured, as when the sun new risen looks through the horizontal misty air shorn of his beams, or from behind the moon in dim eclipse disastrous twilight sheds on half the nations, and with fear of change perplexes monarchs. Darkened so, yet shone above them all the archangel, but his face deep scars of thunder had entrenched, and care sat on his faded cheek, but under brows of dauntless courage and considerate pride, waiting revenge. Cruel his eye, but cast signs of remorse and passion to behold the fellows of his crime, the followers rather, far other once beheld in bliss, condemned forever now to have their lot in pain. Millions of spirits for his fault immersed of heaven, and from eternal splendors flung for his revolt. Yet faithful how they stood, their glory withered, as when heaven's fire hath scathed the forest oaks or mountain pines with singed top their stately growth, though bare stands in the blasted heath. He now prepared to speak, where at their doubled ranks they bend from wing to wing, and half enclose him round with all his peers. Attention held them mute. Thrice he essayed, and thrice in spite of scorn, tears such as angels weep burst forth. At last, words interwove with sighs found out their way. Even Satan is so moved with remorse he can't quite speak. It's 3 times he begins to weep before he speaks. It's a long description of him. He's towering over the others. He is still at this moment in the kind of cosmic history that Milton imagines. Satan has fallen, but he still looks partly like himself. He has not been entirely ruined. He looks like archangel ruined. And there's a long, important, epic simile there. He has dauntless courage. Deep scars of thunder have entrenched on his face. He looks evil. He's showing the signs of his suffering that are darkening him. His followers are described to a vast forest that's been through a forest fire, and they're the dark, blackened trunks. I'm sorry, only scathed by lightning on the blasted heath. Why lightning? Because these people have been hit by lightning. He is described as archangel ruined and the excessive glory obscured, and here's one of those classic double or nothing, 2 for 1 Miltonic epic similes. As when the sun new risen looks through the horizontal misty air shorn of his beams. like the sun through the clouds. We've had that description before. Actually, Britomart is described like that a lot. It's a standard epic simile. Or from behind the moon, in dim eclipse, disastrous twilight sheds on half the nations with fear of change perplexes monarchs. Like the sun behind a cloud, or the sun behind the moon being eclipsed, throwing half the world into darkness and terrifying monarchs. Yeah, okay, he's like an eclipse of the sun now, and that becomes ominous. Again, the epic simile is meaningful. He's compared to this thing that is like him, ominous, terrifying, maybe brings down human might. Here's Satan's BS. Satan's a bullshitter. Satan is an enormous bullshitter. He is the greatest bullshitter in history. Milton is giving him incredibly subtle and sophisticated bullshit and trusting us to see through it. Oh, myriads of immortal spirits. Oh, this is from line 622. Oh, myriads of immortal spirits. Oh, powers, matchless but with the Almighty. And that strife was not inglorious, though the events was dire, as this place testifies, and this dire change hateful to utter. But what power of mind, foreseeing or presaging from the depth of knowledge past or present, could have feared how such united force of gods, how such as stood like these, could ever know repulse? How could this army ever lose? Who could have known? Who could have known? That rhetorical question hides the lie. It was what a surprise. We couldn't have seen it. We should have done it. Matchless, but for the man. And it wasn't inglorious. It wasn't an inglorious fight. It was close. It was, you can't even say it's close. It was not inglorious. For who can yet believe? Who can believe that we lost? Who could have predicted we lost? Actually, then he moves to who could believe it now? For who can yet believe, though after loss, that all these puissant legions, whose exile have emptied heaven, shall fail to reascend self-raised and possess their native seat? Who can believe that we won't climb back to the top? How could it be that we won't? Who could fail to believe? He doesn't say, notice the rhetorical question hides the state. He won't say, we will go back. He said, we'll rise under our own power, we'll fly out of here and take heaven back. He says, who can believe that we wouldn't? It's a very evasive and tricky question. For me be witness, all the host of heaven, if counsels different or danger shunned, by me have lost our hopes. But he who reigns monarch in heaven, again, that we will not call him God, we don't say he is the king of heaven, the monarch. He who reigns monarch in heaven, till then is one secure, sat on his throne, upheld by old repute, consent, or custom, and his regal state put forth at full, but still his strength concealed, which tempted our attempt and wrought our fall. Oh, now it's God's fault for hiding his power. He was sitting on his throne out of custom, not because he deserves it, out of custom or reputation, these things that really should be, and in 17th century human terms, should be questioned. But he concealed it, and he tempted us by concealing our strength. Isn't that amazing? It's like, hey man, it's your fault I tried to rob you. You didn't tell me you had a gun. So really, you set me up, man. No, no. The idea, oh, he tempted us because he didn't show us how strong he was till we rolled up on him, that is absurd. That is an excuse. But man, it's slippery. He slides it right by. Henceforth his might we know and know our own, so as neither not to provoke or dread new war. Provoked, our better part remains to work in close design, by fraud or guile. We are going. Then he moves like, oh, we should do this, or like by fraud or guile. And he switches. Instead of, he's been talking about war, but then he starts to talk about trickery. We're going to use guile. We're going to use tricks, because he knows he can't face God head on. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say, hey, we've been whipped, so now let's play dirty. He talks about how glorious they were, how close they came, how improbable it was that they lost. Is it surprising that we lost? No, no. Omnipotent versus not omnipotent. Not a surprise at all. So now we're going to use more indirect means, i.e. I'm going to start playing dirty. Watch for it. It happens constantly. his soliloquy in book 4 is very different from this, where he owns what he's done, where he admits it, he was wrong, where he accepts that he should not have done this. But when he speaks to others, he's always, including to the good guardian angels, to the angels guarding heaven in book 4, he takes a very different, much more slippery tack.